All right, so get this. We're diving into a Spanish language learning book called Professor Chavez's Adventures in the USA. It's not your typical textbook, though, is it?
No, not at all. It's this virtual road trip through all 50 states.
Oh, wow.
And you learn Spanish along the way through the eyes of, well, Professor Chavez. Imagine learning verbs while checking out the Grand Canyon.
I love that. Sneaking the learning in while you're having fun. Speaking of fun, the book uses these short stories about her experiencing local culture. Food, music, the whole nine yards. It even throws in comprehension questions.
Exactly. And that's key, right? It's not just, okay, memorize these words. It's let's put them in context. It actually touches on some really interesting pedagogical theories about how we learn. You ever notice how much easier it is to remember something when there's a story, an emotion tied to it?
Oh, for sure. Like, I tried to learn Italian just by listening to opera.
Oh,
Didn't really help me with everyday conversations, but I could tell you all about a very tragic love story.
exactly. So this book taps into that. It's weaving language learning into, a really captivating narrative.
I'm right.
So our mission today, uncover the most fascinating bits about each state as Professor Chavez sees them,
Okay.
and figure out how the book blends language learning with this cultural exploration. Ready for a road trip?
Let's hit it. Let's start with Alabama, where Professor Chavez visits Montgomery.
Okay.
Goes straight to history at the Civil Rights Museum.
Ah,
Learns all about Rosa Parks and the movement she sparked.
so a new Spanish speaker learning about the civil rights movement for the first time, and they're, expanding their vocabulary to discuss these events. That's impactful stuff.
Yeah, pretty incredible. And of course, no trip to Alabama is complete without the food, barbecue, banana pudding.
Right.
She even gets a little bit of Alabama's musical heritage with Lionel Richie.
Nice. Speaking of music, next we find Professor Chavez in Alaska braving the cold to see the northern lights.
Oh, wow.
The book uses all this sensory description here, so it paints a vivid picture for the reader. Imagine describing those lights in Spanish.
Ooh, that's a vocabulary challenge I'd be up for.
Right. Talk about immersive learning. She's got bears, moose, fresh salmon, hot chocolate.
Wow.
She even meets the Inupiat people and learns about their traditions.
This book is packed.
It is, and that's, that variety is important.
Right?
Keeps you on your toes.
For sure.
Keeps learners engaged, exposed to all these different facets of language and culture. Now let's head south to Arizona, where Professor Chavez stands in awe of the Grand Canyon.
Okay, so I'm sensing a theme here. Professor Chavez is a foodie.
Uh-huh.
She's having carne asada tacos and chimichangas in Arizona. I wonder if the book, gives any cultural insights into these dishes, or if it just focuses on the words.
That's a great question, and it speaks to the balance that the book tries to strike between language and exploration. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, for sure.
With the sounds of Linda Ronstadt, she's having a good time, I think.
Yeah. Next stop, Arkansas.
Okay.
Professor Chavez is in Little Rock, delves into presidential history at the Clinton Presidential Library.
It's interesting how the book links these famous people to their states. It's a mnemonic device, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's helping learners make those mental connections. For example, Johnny Cash, Arkansas.
Yeah, that works.
Hard to forget that pair.
Exactly. More Southern food on the menu, too. Fried chicken and sweet potatoes. I've started to feel like I need a Professor Chavez U.S. cuisine cookbook.
Now that would be something. Speaking of, get ready for some California sunshine as Professor Chavez embarks on a very classic California experience. Hollywood Walk of Fame, Golden Gate Bridge, the whole thing.
Wow, her California adventure sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And keeping on with the food theme, fish tacos this time, I gotta admit, I am getting a little jealous of all this good food.
Well, and it makes you think too, right?
Yeah.
We need to be incorporating more sensory experiences into our own learning. It's about making the learning more vivid, more engaging, and then think you're describing those experiences in another language.
That's a good point. Okay, our next stop is North Carolina, where Professor Chavez takes in those Blue Ridge Mountains.
Beautiful.
I'm curious, does the book use any, imagery or metaphors to describe the scenery? It'd be a nice way to expand vocabulary.
That's a good observation. I'm noticing you're starting to think like a language teacher yourself.
Well, I'm learning from the best. Professor Chavez gets a lesson in innovation as she learns about the Wright brothers and the birth of aviation in North Carolina.
Of course.
And no trip to Carolina would be complete without barbecue. I'm from Texas, so I'm a bit biased towards our style, but always open to trying new things.
And I think that open-mindedness is key to any successful learning experience, whether we're talking language or culture or even barbecue. Speaking of expanding horizons, Professor Chavez goes to Puerto Rico,
Oh, wow.
specifically San Juan.
I've always wanted to visit. It's such a blend of cultures and history. I wonder if the book delves into the differences in Spanish.
Oh.
Like mainland versus Puerto Rico.
That's a fantastic question, and it highlights another layer of learning that this book's offering. It's not just, okay, here's Spanish. It's, understand the nuances,
Right.
the regional variations
Okay, yeah.
within the language itself.
It doesn't shy away from the culture either. We've got mofongo, pina coladas, dancing to salsa, Mark Anthony and Bad Bunny. What a contrast to the next stop, South Carolina.
It is.
Right.
It is quite a shift from those lively streets of San Juan to Charleston with all this historic architecture, cobblestone
Yeah.
streets, and then Fort Sumter, where the Civil War began. It's a reminder, I think, of how diverse the U.S. really is,
Yeah.
geographically, historically.
And the food journey continues. She's got shrimp and grits and sweet tea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to think this book is as much a food guide as it is, a Spanish learning tool.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the genius of it.
Yeah.
Using these familiar things
Right.
to make the learning more engaging. Okay, are you ready for Colorado? We're headed there next. Professor Chavez is in Denver,
Okay.
the Mile High City. The Rocky Mountain are her backdrop.
It's interesting how the book uses nicknames, right? And those little trivia facts to make learning more memorable. I bet you're more likely to remember that it's called the Mile High City than just its elevation.
I think so.
Right. And speaking of memorable, she's got grilled bison and craft beer while listening to John Denver.
I love how the book just blends these things together. Food, music, geography. It's like creating this tapestry of knowledge.
Next up, Connecticut. She's in New Haven visiting Yale University.
Oh, wow.
I wondered if it talks about the history of Yale, maybe uses some academic vocabulary.
Now that would be a smart way to introduce more specialized words. It's all about building on that foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So after Yale, she stops at the Peabody Museum of Natural History, enjoys a New Haven-style hamburger.
Nice.
And get this, the musical accompaniment for this leg of the journey is provided by Michael Bolton.
Wait, what? Michael Bolton. That's unexpected. Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern. This book loves to throw in little surprises.
Yeah, keeps things fresh.
Right, keeps you on your toes.
Challenges, I think, what you think about language and culture. Okay, ready for a hidden gem. North Dakota.
North Dakota. Now, that's not a state that usually tops the places to go list. What's there?
I think we're in for a treat. She visits Theodore Roosevelt National Park, sees some bison herds, tries left, a traditional, it's a potato flatbread, basically. It's kind of like a thin, soft tortilla.
Interesting.
And she even learns about the state's Scandinavian heritage, which most people don't associate with North Dakota.
That's fascinating. It just shows you every state has its own story. And to round out her North Dakota experience, a little bit of Hollywood. Josh Duhamel, he's from there.
Then it's on to South Dakota, Mount Rushmore,
Oh, wow.
those presidential sculptures.
Yeah. I wonder if it provides any, historical context, like the carving or, the controversy,
Sure.
building it on sacred land.
Right.
And while we're on that topic, Professor Chavez tries fry bread and learns about the Lakota warrior Crazy Horse. I'm really impressed with how the book brings in those perspectives.
It's about a more complete picture, right?
Yeah.
And that benefits everyone, I think. Okay, ready for a change of pace. She's going to the coast. Delaware.
So we left off with Professor Chavez enjoying the coast of Delaware.
Right.
Where to next?
South to the Sunshine State, Florida. She experiences that vibrant Cuban culture of Miami's Little Havana, and of course a quintessential Florida experience, Disney World in Orlando.
Oh, wow.
I'm picturing her practicing her Spanish with Mickey Mouse.
Now that's a learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I bet she's picking up all those useful phrases, for theme parks, ordering treats. Speaking of, what kind of culinary delights does she encounter in Florida?
Well, she dives into the heart of Cuban cuisine. Ropa vieja, it's this flavorful shredded beef dish, and sips on some strong Cuban coffee. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Me too.
And the soundtrack for this adventure.
Let me guess, Gloria Estefan.
You got it. The queen of Latin pop herself.
It's interesting how the book uses music, not just to represent a region, but, maybe to tap into different learning styles.
Right.
Some people are more auditory learners. Music can be really powerful for language.
Absolutely. It's like you're learning through osmosis, just absorbing those sounds. Okay, from the sunny beaches of Florida, let's travel to Georgia, where Professor Chavez visits Atlanta
Okay.
and explores the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. at the National Historical Park.
That's a poignant stop on her journey. And it makes me wonder how the book handles these complex topics. Does it give historical context in Spanish, or does it encourage the learners to research those events themselves?
That's a great question, and it speaks to how deep this book tries to go. It's not just, surface level. It's about pushing the learners to engage with history and culture on a deeper level.
Right. And amidst all the history and culture, there's still time for, peach cobbler and sweet tea.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Chavez is getting a well-rounded Southern cuisine education. And to accompany those flavors, the soulful sounds of Ray Charles.
From the soulful sounds of Georgia, Professor Chavez goes to the Pacific, Hawaii. She explores the volcanic landscapes of Kilauea, experiences that unique island culture.
I've always been curious about how Hawaiian language and culture is integrated into the whole concept of American culture,
Right.
with their very distinct history and influences.
That's such a good point. It's a reminder that American culture is, well, it's incredibly diverse
Yeah,
and multifaceted.
right.
I bet the book uses this as a way to kind of highlight that, the multilingual nature of the U.S.,
Oh, interesting.
encouraging lawyers to embrace those traditions,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Professor Chavez tries poke, the raw fish dish, and learns about King Kamehameha I, the unifier of the islands.
And of course, no Hawaiian adventure is complete without the soothing melodies of Israel Kamakawiwo'ole.
Oh, starts humming Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Right.
Yeah, that one's going to be stuck in my head all day now. Okay, from the tropical paradise of Hawaii, let's go Idaho, where Professor Chavez finds herself in Boise, the capital.
Yeah.
Now, Idaho might not be the first state that comes to mind when you think of travel, but I'm sure Professor Chavez finds something to explore.
Oh, she does. She sees Shoshone Falls. It's this majestic waterfall, rivals Niagara Falls.
Wow.
And enjoys a meal of baked potatoes with all the fixings.
I know, right? This book is making me so hungry. It's using food to connect with culture, vocabulary,
Mm-hmm.
but is it also teaching about regional differences, culinary traditions? How food shapes identity.
Those are fantastic questions. It's all about those layers, right? The book could just focus on the basics,
Yeah.
but it sounds like it's going beyond that. It's encouraging learners to think critically about that.
So beyond the food, she learns about Ernest Hemingway's connection to Idaho.
Oh.
He spent his last years there. He's actually buried in Ketchum. I wonder if the book uses that as a way to introduce literary vocabulary,
Right.
or maybe encourages learners to explore his works in Spanish.
That would be really cool. Okay, from the potato fields of Idaho, we find ourselves in the bustling energy of Illinois, Chicago, the Windy City.
Chicago it's just such a vibrant city. It's got that iconic skyline, world-class museums, and that thriving art scene.
It does. So she starts by taking in the views from Willis Tower, then wanders through Millennium Park, home to Cloud Gate, that giant bean-shaped sculpture.
Oh, the bean. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to see that. It looks so surreal in pictures.
It does. And of course, no trip to Chicago is complete without deep dish pizza. And Professor Chavez, she doesn't skip a beat.
Right.
Then to top it off, an evening of authentic Chicago blues.
It's fascinating how the book uses music,
Yeah,
to represent different regions, different periods. It's like a musical journey through the U.S.
it is, and it helps you remember those state-specific details. Okay, from the bluesy vibes of Chicago, we go to Indiana.
Indiana. I have to admit, the only thing I really know about Indiana is the Indy 500. What does she do there?
Well, she starts by, experiencing the thrill of racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Of course.
Then she indulges in some local treats like Indiana sugar cream pie and caramel corn.
Sugar cream pie. That's a new one. I wonder if the book, talks about these regional specialties. Like, how did it come about? What's the story behind it?
Right.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be Professor Chavez's adventure without a little culinary exploration. And musically, she gets into the legacy of the king of pop himself. Michael Jackson, born in Indiana.
That's a nice touch. It's a reminder that these small towns, they can have such a big impact.
They can. Next up is Iowa, where Professor Chavez sees the heartland of America's agriculture. She visits a corn farm, observes the cows and pigs, and even tries a slice of rhubarb pie.
Rhubarb pie, another classic. To round out her Iowa experience, John Wayne. He had roots there, too.
He did.
It's interesting how it connects, different figures to their states. Music, film, literature.
It's like building this web, right?
Yeah.
Of knowledge. Okay, from the farmlands of Iowa, let's head to Kansas. Professor Chavez visits Dodge City, a town steeped in Wild West history.
Dodge City. I'm picturing saloons, cowboys, shootouts at high noon.
Well, she visits a Western music, sees all those vintage clothes and weapons, and of course tries some hearty chili.
Chili, another classic. But does the book, go into the regional variations?
Oh, that's interesting.
There's Texas chili, no beans. Cincinnati chili over spaghetti.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It shows that even something as simple as chili has all this history behind it.
For sure. So beyond the chili, Professor Chavez learns about tornadoes.
Oh.
Those powerful storms, a frequent occurrence in Kansas.
Right.
I wonder if the book, uses any vivid imagery or metaphors
Sure.
to describe those storms.
Yeah, that would bring those vocabulary words to life.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of memorable figures, Amelia Earhart, the pioneering aviator, she's from Kansas. Her story, I mean, it's just courage and adventure.
It is. Okay, from the wide open spaces of Kansas, Professor Chavez heads south to Kentucky,
Oh, okay.
home of the Kentucky Derby.
The Kentucky Derby, that's another one on my bucket list. I can just imagine the excitement, the fashion,
Right.
the mint juleps.
Professor Chavez takes it all in. She visits a horse farm, experiences the thrill of those races, and enjoys, you guessed it, Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Is KFC truly representative of Kentucky cuisine? Debatable.
Maybe, maybe not.
But it's certainly an American icon. And speaking of icons, Kentucky is also where she learns about Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Another figure whose impact, I mean, it goes way beyond sports.
Absolutely. Okay, ready for something different. From the Kentucky Derby, she finds herself in the vibrant culture of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans.
New Orleans. With all that history, music, food.
She strolls through the French Quarter, taking it all in. And of course, no trip to New Orleans is complete without gumbo and beignets.
Oh, those beignets. So delicious, especially when they're fresh and hot.
They are good. And to top it off, she enjoys a live jazz performance, honoring the city's musical heritage and Louis Armstrong.
I wonder if the book, talks about the history of jazz or uses, like, music vocabulary.
Yeah, that would be fun to bring in that musical education.
Okay, from the jazz clubs of New Orleans, she journeys to Maine. I'm picturing rocky shores, lighthouses, and delicious seafood.
You got it. Maine, with that rugged coastline, charming lighthouses. That's where Professor Chavez goes to Portland and sees the Portland Headlight, one of the most iconic in the U.S.
I can just picture her standing there, breathing in the fresh sea air, practicing her Spanish.
Yeah.
I wonder if the book, brings in nautical terms. Maybe even some maritime history.
You're full of insightful questions today. I'm really impressed.
Oh, shucks. Well, I'm learning from the best. So what kind of culinary adventures does she have in Maine?
Classic Maine cuisine, lobster rolls, and hot apple cider.
Lobster rolls. That's a must-try. And apple cider? Perfect for fall.
It is. Maine is also where she learns about Stephen King
Oh, wow.
and his connection to the state.
I'm a big fan. His books are so creepy.
They are.
I wonder if, the book introduces any vocabulary for, horror or suspense.
That would be fun. Okay, ready for our next stop. From the spooky landscapes of Stephen King's Maine, Professor Chavez goes south to Maryland, Baltimore.
Baltimore. What does she do in Baltimore?
She starts by exploring the Inner Harbor. It's this bustling area with shops, restaurants, attractions, and no trip to Maryland would be complete without crab cakes.
Crab cakes. Another regional specialty. This book, it really is a culinary journey.
I think that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah.
Using food as that gateway
Right.
to culture and language. Beyond the crab cake, she also learns about Edgar Allan Poe, who lived in Baltimore.
Edgar Allan Poe, I love his dark and macabre stories. I wonder if the book talks about, his writing style.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe uses his vocabulary to teach about mood and atmosphere.
That would be cool. Okay, from Baltimore, let's go to Massachusetts.
Okay.
Boston, steeped in history.
Boston is definitely a city I want to visit, with its role in the Revolution, all the historical landmarks.
So she starts by following the Freedom Trail.
Oh, cool.
That walking tour
Yeah.
takes you past all those important historical sites. She visits the Old North Church, walks past Faneuil Hall.
I've heard that walking the Freedom Trail is really the best way to experience the history of Boston. It's like stepping back in time.
It is. And along the way, another regional specialty, clam chowder.
Clam chowder, New England classic. Maybe we should do a Professor Chavez culinary road trip.
I'm in. Okay, after Boston, she heads west to Michigan, Detroit.
Detroit. I wonder how the book, portrays Detroit and its history.
She goes to the Henry Ford Museum
Okay.
and explores the history of the automobile
Oh, that's so interesting.
and its impact on American culture.
Yeah, because, the car has played such a huge role in shaping, American society. Like the suburbs, the highway system. I wonder if the book touches on any of that.
That would be really cool to connect it with those bigger ideas.
Yeah.
While she's in Michigan, she tries pasties, a hand pie with meat and vegetables.
Pasties, another one for the food list.
Right, and musically, she gets into Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul from Detroit.
Aretha Franklin. What a legend. Okay, from Detroit, where does she go next?
North to Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes.
Oh, wow.
She visits Minneapolis and checks out the Mall of America, one of the biggest malls in the world.
The Mall of America. I've heard it's massive.
It is. It's more than just a mall, too. It's an entertainment complex.
I bet she's practicing her Spanish, with all the shopkeepers navigating those hallways.
I bet. And while she's in Minnesota, she tries, get this, Tater tot hottish.
Tater tot hottish. That sounds very Midwestern.
It is.
Does the book, explain like the cultural significance of hottish? Maybe gives a recipe?
That would be fun.
Right.
And musically, Prince, he called Minnesota home.
Prince. Okay, from Minnesota, where to next?
South to Mississippi, where she visits Jackson, the capital, and walks along the Mississippi River.
The Mississippi River. It's just so iconic. It's been, the inspiration for so many songs, books, you name it. Does the book, use the river to talk about those cultural connections, maybe even delves into the history, how it shaped the country?
That would be really interesting. While she's in Mississippi, she immerses herself in the blues, born in the Mississippi Delta.
The blues. Such a powerful genre of music. I wonder if it talks about, the history of it, the connection to African-American culture.
Right. And for dinner, fried chicken and mac and cheese.
Oh, wow. She is making her way through all the regional specialties.
She is. Okay, from the bluesy sounds of Mississippi, Professor Chavez goes to Missouri.
Okay.
St. Louis. Stands in awe of the Gateway Arch.
The Gateway Arch. I've always wanted to see that. Does the book talk about, the architecture or how they built it?
I'm sure it does. Professor Chavez, she's all about the details.
Right. And while she's in Missouri, Kansas City-style barbecue.
There you go.
Okay, now, being from Texas, I am a bit biased towards our barbecue, but I'm always down to try new variations. Does the book compare different styles, like Texas versus Kansas City?
That would be fun.
Right.
And musically, Chuck Berry, pioneer of rock and roll.
Chuck Berry. Okay, from Missouri, where to next?
West to Montana, Professor Chavez is in Yellowstone National Park.
Yellowstone. That is my dream trip. I could just imagine it. The geysers, the bison. It's making me want to pat my bags right now.
I know, right?
Yeah. So does the book use any descriptive language to evoke the beauty of it all? Maybe even talks about the science, behind those geothermal features?
That would be cool.
Right.
Professor Chavez enjoys another meal of grilled bison.
Grilled bison. Now, that's not something you see every day. Does the book talk about, like, the history of the bison? Or, its significance to Native Americans?
That would be interesting. And to wrap up Montana, she learns about Sacagawea, the Native American guide who helped Lewis and Clark. Her story is all about courage, resilience, and cultural understanding.
I love how it incorporates these figures and events. It's not just about language, it's broadening your horizons.
Exactly. Okay, from Montana to Nebraska, known for its agriculture.
Nebraska, I'm picturing cornfields, wide open spaces.
She visits Omaha, a major city in the heartland, and explores a corn farm.
I wonder if it talks about the science of agriculture. Or, maybe the challenges that farmers face today.
That may be interesting. And for dinner, she enjoys a classic Nebraska steak.
Nebraska steak. I'm getting hungry.
Right. And get this, Nebraska is also where Professor Chavez learns about Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha. It's interesting, isn't it? A state known for agriculture is also home to a financial giant.
That's such a good point. It shows you, even in a place that seems, one way on the surface, there's always more to discover.
Right. Ready for a change of scenery?
Yeah.
From the heartland to Nevada.
Okay.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, the entertainment capital of the world. I can just picture Professor Chavez, in those casinos, those shows.
She marvels at the Bellagio fountain.
Oh, wow.
Tries her luck at the slot machines, hopefully using some of that Spanish she's learned.
Right.
And of course, she has that classic Las Vegas buffet experience.
The buffets, that's a whole thing in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
And she takes in a magic show, too.
Ooh. I wonder if the book, uses that to teach about, like, verbs of perception. Or even those psychological principles behind illusions.
That would be clever. Okay, from the dazzling lights of Vegas to New Hampshire.
Oh, wow. Quite a change of pace.
She visits the White Mountains, sees that beautiful fall foliage.
New Hampshire in the fall, that sounds amazing. Just those vibrant colors.
She hikes through the forests, breathes in the crisp air, and enjoys a breakfast of pancakes with maple syrup.
Pancakes and maple syrup. That's a classic. I wonder if the book, talks about maple syrup production.
Oh, yeah.
Or uses that to teach about different trees.
It could. New Hampshire is also where Professor Chavez learns about Franklin Pierce, the 14th president.
Franklin Pierce. Now, he's not one I know much about.
Right.
It's cool how the book brings into those lesser-known figures.
It does. Okay, from New Hampshire south to New Jersey, Atlantic City, another city with casinos and that lively boardwalk scene.
Atlantic City. I can just imagine the boardwalk, those slot machines, the saltwater taffy.
Professor Chavez experiences it all.
Yeah.
The boardwalk, the games of chance. And for lunch, classic Jersey Shore, pizza and fries.
Pizza and fries. This Professor Chavez, she really knows how to find good food.
She does.
And for music. Bruce Springsteen.
The boss himself.
Okay, from the Jersey Shore, she heads to one of the most iconic cities, New York City.
New York City, the Big Apple. I wonder what she'll discover there.
New York City, the Big Apple. I mean, with those iconic skyscrapers, those busy streets, it seems like the perfect place to really put her Spanish to the test.
It is, and the book uses New York as a way to introduce like all that practical vocab. Ordering a bagel from a street vendor, asking for directions, maybe trying to hail a cab.
Oh yeah, all in Spanish.
All in Spanish.
I bet those real world interactions are way more effective than, any classroom drill.
Oh, for sure. Professor Chavez doesn't just, scratch the surface. Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, Central Park. She even grabs a New York hot dog. It's using those classic experiences to teach about the city, landmarks, neighborhoods.
So it's more than just words. It's like capturing the essence of the place. And speaking of capturing essence, Alexander Hamilton, his story is just so tied to New York City.
Right, blending history, language, even a little financial vocab.
Yeah. I wonder if it mentions the Broadway show of
Oh,
Hamilton.
that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay, from the bright lights of Broadway to New Mexico, she's in Santa Fe, known for its art and culture.
Yeah.
How does it use a place like that to teach language? I mean, there's so many opportunities to talk about art, architecture.
You're right. So Professor Chavez goes to the George O'Keeffe Museum,
Oh, wow.
immerses herself in the world of art, colors, shapes, styles, all of that. She strolls through that historic plaza, the adobe architecture, and maybe
Yeah.
picks up some words about, building techniques, design.
I love it. And of course we got to talk food. What you eating in Santa Fe?
Green chile enchiladas.
Ooh, yum.
It captures that unique blend of Mexican and Native American influences that, is New Mexican cuisine. I wonder if the book talk about, chili peppers, their role in southwestern food.
That would be cool. And what about the music? What's the soundtrack to her New Mexican adventure?
Lost Lonely Boys.
Oh,
A
cool.
band with deep roots in the state. They've got that blend of blues, rock, a little Tex-Mex. It really reflects the multicultural influences in New Mexico.
From the artistic landscapes of New Mexico to Ohio, she's in Cleveland at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This book is taking us on a musical road trip.
It is, and it's showing how music really reflects each place, history, culture, all tied in. So Professor Chavez is immersed in rock and roll history. I bet she even tries to describe her favorite songs in Spanish.
I can totally picture it. But her Ohio adventure isn't just rock and roll. What else?
Well, she tries pirogues,
Oh,
those potato and cheese dumplings,
yeah.
reflecting the state's Eastern European heritage.
See, it's a reminder that American cuisine it's really a melting pot. And this book seems to be celebrating that.
Oh, absolutely. And she learns about Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. He was from Ohio.
That's right. Okay, from Ohio to Oklahoma, a state that just, I mean, it brings to mind cowboys, Native American culture.
It does. So Professor Chavez visits the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum.
Oh, cool.
She's immersing herself in the history of the West.
Right.
Maybe even picking up some cowboy lingo in Spanish. Imagine that.
I bet she does. And she learns about the Cherokee Nation, too.
Yes.
I'm curious, how does the book approach, Native American history and culture?
Well, it would be strange to leave that out,
Right.
right? It's such an important part of American history. And while she's learning about the Cherokee Nation, she tries fry bread with honey,
Fried bread?
a traditional food.
Okay, another one for the food list.
Right. And to round out Oklahoma, she listens to Blake Shelton,
Oh, nice.
country music star.
I wonder if the book uses, country music as a way to teach about different genres, or even, the storytelling aspect of it.
That's a good point. Okay, from Oklahoma to Oregon, known for its beauty and that, kind of quirky spirit.
Oregon. It's a state that just embraces being different, right?
Right. And Professor Chavez seems to really enjoy it. She explores Portland, the parks, the bridges, all that good stuff.
Portland is on my list.
It should be. It's a haven for foodies, nature lovers, the whole nine yards.
Okay, so what kind of food does she try in Portland?
Well, she tries a voodoo donut. You familiar?
Yeah.
Known for their crazy creations. Imagine trying to describe, like, a bacon maple frosting donut in Spanish.
That would be a challenge.
Right. And she visits Crater Lake National Park. It's this volcanic caldera filled with deep blue water.
Wow. I wonder if the book, talks about the geology, or even, myths and legends around it.
That would be fun. And on the literary side, she learns about Beverly Cleary.
Oh, I loved her books growing up.
She said a lot of her stories in Portland.
Cool.
So maybe the book uses that as a jumping off point, for children's literature in Spanish.
Okay, from Portland to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love.
Steeped in history, Professor Chavez visits Independence Hall,
Oh, wow.
where the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, were signed.
Amazing. I wondered if it talks about, like, the ideas behind, the founding of the country.
That would be really cool.
Right. And no trip to Philly is complete without a Philly cheesesteak.
Of course not. Professor Chavez, she makes sure to try one. And she learns about Benjamin Franklin, founding father, inventor, scientist, a real Renaissance man.
From Philly, she heads to the smallest state,
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Small in size, but big on charm.
How does the book use Rhode Island, though?
Well, Professor Chavez visits Newport, known for historic mansions, beautiful coastlines.
Oh, cool.
She strolls along the cliff walk,
Oh, nice.
sees those Gilded Age mansions, and tries clam cakes, another regional specialty.
Clam cakes. Professor Chavez is really taking us on a culinary tour of America. I'm getting so many ideas.
You should.
Yeah. And what about Rhode Island's literary connection?
H.P. Lovecraft,
Oh, wow.
the horror writer. I wonder if the book uses his work to, teach about horror vocabulary, the supernatural.
That would be fun. Okay, from the spooky tales of Lovecraft to Nashville, Tennessee,
Music City.
a place that draws music lovers from all over.
Professor Chavez really dives into the scene, the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Oh, nice. Learning all about those legends. Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton. She attends a show at the Grand Ole Opry and, of course, tries some Nashville hot chicken.
Oh, hot chicken. Does it give a recipe in Spanish?
Maybe. That would be fun to try it out. Okay, from Nashville to Texas, the Lone Star State.
Texas, all right. I might be biased, but I think she's in for a real treat.
Texas is bigger than life, that's for sure.
It is.
So in Houston, she visits the NASA Space Center. I wonder if it uses that opportunity to bring in some space vocabulary.
Right.
Maybe even explore the history of space travel.
Yeah, or the contributions of Hispanic astronauts.
Exactly. And while she's in Texas, she has to have some Texas barbecue.
Oh, the barbecue.
Brisket, ribs, sausage.
It's the best.
And she explores the legacy of Selena.
Selena, an icon. Her music, her story, it's amazing that the book highlights her.
It is. Okay, from Texas to Utah, known for red rock landscapes and that unique Mormon heritage.
Utah's another one that's on my list.
It should be. Professor Chavez visits Salt Lake City, learns about the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I wonder if it talks about, the culture of the Mormon community.
Right, how their beliefs have shaped the state.
Shaped the state, exactly. She also explores Arches National Park. I mean, those towering sandstone arches, the desert. It's incredible.
And we can't forget food. What's she having in Utah?
Honey scones.
Oh, those sound good.
Right, and she learns about Butch Cassidy.
Oh, Butch Cassidy, another legend. Does the book use his story, to talk about outlaws? Or even myths of the West?
That would be really cool. Okay, from Utah to Vermont, what will she discover in the Green Mountain State?
Vermont. I'm picturing charming towns, those rolling hills, the fall colors.
It's a change of pace.
Right.
She visits Montpelier, the capital, and just takes in all the sights and sounds of rural Vermont.
I wonder if it uses this to, to teach about different types of landscapes or nature vocabulary.
Right.
And the food.
Waffles with maple syrup.
Waffles. Okay, I'm ready for my Professor Chavez food tour.
Right. Vermont is also where Professor Chavez learns about Calvin Coolidge.
Calvin Coolidge, okay. Not one of the presidents I know that much about.
Okay, from Vermont, she heads to Virginia.
Virginia, a state so important to American history.
Professor Chavez visits Williamsburg, the Living History Museum, where you go back to colonial times.
Oh, cool.
She walks those streets, sees people in period costumes. It's like stepping back in time.
Right, and while she's in Virginia, she tries Virginia ham.
Of course. And no trip to Virginia would be complete without learning about George Washington.
Oh, for sure.
His home at Mount Vernon. I wonder if the book, goes into his life
Right.
or talks about like leadership, political ideas, all that.
From the history of Virginia to West Virginia, I'm curious, how does it use a state like that, with its very specific culture and history?
West Virginia is a fascinating state, and it's often overlooked. So Professor Chavez goes to the New River Gorge Bridge. It's this engineering marvel, spans this huge canyon. I wonder if it uses the bridge to teach about engineering. Or maybe the history of transportation.
Yeah.
Infrastructure.
Connecting it to STEM, I like it.
Right. And while she's there, she tries rainbow trout.
Rainbow trout.
It's fresh from those clear rivers.
Does the book, use this to teach about different kinds of fish? Or maybe vocabulary for fishing?
That would be cool. And historically, she learns about Chuck Yeager, the test pilot who broke the sound barrier.
Oh, wow.
I wonder if the book uses his story, to talk about like courage, determination.
From West Virginia to Washington State,
Beautiful Washington.
known for its nature, its tech scene, and just that vibrant culture.
It is. Professor Chavez visits Seattle, the Emerald City, explores Pike Place Market,
Oh, cool.
the fishmongers and all that, rides the ferry. It's really a unique city.
It is. And speaking of unique, she learns about Bill Gates and Microsoft.
Ah.
I wonder if the book uses that to teach about entrepreneurship. Maybe some, like, tech vocabulary.
That would be really neat. And of course, she has to try some fresh salmon.
Pacific Northwest salmon.
The best.
The best. Okay, we're almost there, Professor Pavez's last stops.
Almost there.
Next up, Wisconsin, the land of cheese and beer.
Wisconsin, embracing those holiday traditions. So Professor Chavez heads to Milwaukee,
Okay.
explores the breweries, tries different beers.
Oh, nice. I wonder if it uses this to teach about different types of beer. Or even, like the process of making it.
Right. Wisconsin is also known for its cheese. Cheddar, Colby, Monterey Jack.
Oh, yum. I'm getting hungry again. Does the book talk about, like the history of cheese making or how cheese is like significant in different cultures?
That would be fascinating. And architecturally, she learns about Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh, Frank Lloyd Wright.
His designs, it really left a mark on American architecture.
They did. Okay, last stop, Wyoming.
Wyoming, wide open spaces, mountains, wildlife.
It's like the picture of the American West.
It is. And Professor Chavez is back in Yellowstone.
Oh, cool.
This time, though, she's focusing on those geothermal features.
Right.
And the animals, bison, elk, wolves. I wonder if the book uses this, to talk about conservation.
Right.
Maybe environmental vocabulary.
Connecting language to real-world issues.
Exactly. And to wrap up Wyoming, she learns about Buffalo Bill Cody.
Oh, Buffalo Bill.
That's the end of the journey.
Wow. What a trip Professor Chavez has taken us on. It's amazing how she's shown us that learning a language is so much more than just the words, the grammar.
Right.
It could be like a window into another culture.
It really can. What stood out to you most about her approach?
Her curiosity, her enthusiasm, it's contagious.
It is. She approached each state with this sense of wonder.
Yes.
And that willingness to try anything. That's something we could all use a little more of, I think.
Totally. It shows that learning isn't about just, being fluent. It's about those experiences, connecting with people.
And expanding your understanding of the world.
And I think this book does an amazing job of showing that. It's a travelogue. It's a cultural guide.
And it leaves us with a question, right? If you could create your own Professor Chavez adventure, where would you go? What language would you learn? How would you immerse yourself?
Ooh, those are good questions. And the perfect way to end our deep dive. Encourage our listeners to keep exploring, to stay curious.
Absolutely. The world is waiting.